first to the latest on our continuing focus here on WION, the US-led airstrikes which hit government installations in Syria. And addressing a briefing just a short while ago, Pentagon officials described the airstrikes as successful, justified, legitimate and a proportionate response to the Syrian government's continued use of chemical weapons on its own people, adding that the military strike has crippled the Syrian regime's chemical weapons infrastructure. According to the Pentagon officials, the operation was carefully orchestrated and methodically planned to minimize potential collateral damage. Take a listen in to what the Pentagon officials had to say.
The Syrians shot 40 large missiles into the air last night. Those missiles came down somewhere, and so we should just recognize that's a part of this. That's a part of this equation too. But we don't. Right now, we have no reporting of any civilian casualties against any of the targets that we struck, and we'll continue to look at this closely as we go ahead. The Syrians shot 40 large missiles into the air last night. Those missiles came down somewhere, and so we should just recognize that's a part of this. That's a part of this equation too. But we don't. Right now, we have no reporting of any civilian casualties against any of the targets that we struck, and we'll continue to look at this closely as we go ahead.
Meanwhile, U.S. Defense Secretary James Mattis has called the strikes a one-time event and said there are no additional attacks that are being planned. Take a listen in to what he said.
The strike tonight separately demonstrates international resolve to prevent chemical weapons from being used on anyone under any circumstance in contravention of international law. I want to emphasize that these strikes are directed at the Syrian regime. In conducting these strikes, we have gone to great lengths to avoid civilian and foreign casualties. But it is a time for all civilized nations to urgently unite in ending the Syrian civil war by supporting the United Nations-backed Geneva peace process.
Syria was pounded by US-led coalition forces. President Bashar al-Assad has also responded and vowed to fight back. World powers are reacting to that pre-dawn strike in Syria. We also spoke to the Syrian ambassador to India, Riyadh Abbas, a short while ago on what the situation on the ground is right now as a result of those strikes. Take a listen in to what Ambassador Abbas had to say.
As you heard, American aggression against our country because America lost its follower in the ground. It lost its hand of terror groups. That is why America came face to face against our army, against our country.
We also asked the ambassador a question on how Russia has said 100 missiles were fired by the US-led forces, and also how to the extent of the damage that's been caused as a result of those strikes. Take a listen into what the ambassador said.
As I said for you, there is no effect for this missile because our army threw down most of them. 150 missiles was launched by American army, and more than 140 were thrown down by our missiles also. But no effect. Maybe only one missile target Damascus city, but there is no loss, there is no damage, there is no civilian killed, no one were killed by this missile. This no effect for this operation. This only to show American power, to show missile of America, but we are not aware. We will respond. We promise them we will respond, and you will see what will happen in the future.
Ambassador Riyadh Abbas speaking to WION and helping our viewers understand the implications of those airstrikes. The immediate question that also arises as we delve deeper into the implications is the US-led airstrikes, where they really came from. Syria was pounded by the United States-led coalition forces. President Assad has also reacted, but where exactly did the US fire its missiles at Syria from is one of the aspects that remain to be explored. Let's delve deeper into the possibilities. Reports say that the naval strike force from Norfolk on the U.S. East Coast, led by the aircraft carrier Truman, accompanied by other ships, could be within striking range of Syria. Only by the end of April, it has over 9,000 kilometers to cover. So that possibility, according to those indications, seems to be ruled out. But there are other reports as well that suggest that the United States has one guided missile cruiser off the Syrian coast. The USS Donald Cook is armed with Tomahawk cruise missiles and could conceivably have carried out that strike. There's another possibility of how the US has a nuclear-powered submarines whose location is secret but could be deployed somewhere in the Mediterranean Sea. The submarines are also armed with Tomahawk missiles. So that's one possibility that also has been spoken of. The Tomahawk missile has a range of 2,500 kilometers. So it's also possible that they have been fired from near NATO bases in Greece and Italy. Lastly, the missiles could have also been fired from aircraft operating hundreds of kilometers away from Syria. It would be difficult to pinpoint what their exact location would be. The U.S. missile attack appears to show the aftermath of the strikes in the Syrian city of Homs as well. 4 Royal Air Force Tornado jets from a military base in Cyprus fired Storm Shadow missiles at a military facility near Homs where those strikes occurred. This is the footage that's been put out by the U.S. military. In fact, meanwhile, the Syrian state television also shows deep craters and missile paths strewn all around with damaged cars and buildings. Had also reacted, saying that the strikes have only consolidated the determination of the Syrian government to strike back against terrorism emanating on its soil. Meanwhile, a statement that was issued by British Prime Minister Theresa May on the Syria strike. Let's take a listen into what she said.
Each occasion when we have seen every sign of chemical weapons being used, any attempt to hold the perpetrators to account has been blocked by Russia at the UN Security Council, with 6 such vetoes since the start of 2017. Just this week, the Russians vetoed a draft resolution that would have established an independent investigation into this latest attack, even making the grotesque and absurd claim that it was staged by Britain. So we have no choice but to conclude that diplomatic action on its own will not be any more effective in the future than it has been in the past. Over the last week, the UK government has been working intensively with our international partners to build the evidence picture and to consider what action we need to take to prevent and deter future humanitarian catastrophes caused by chemical weapons attacks. When the Cabinet met on Thursday, we considered the advice of the Attorney General, the National Security Advisor and the Chief of the Defence Staff, and we were updated on the latest assessment and intelligence picture. And based on this advice, we agreed that it was both right and legal to take military action, together with our closest allies, to alleviate further humanitarian suffering by degrading the Syrian regime's chemical weapons capability and deterring their use. This was not about interfering in a civil war, and it was not about regime change. As I discussed with President Trump and President Macron, it was a limited, targeted and effective strike with clear boundaries that expressly sought to avoid escalation and did everything possible to prevent civilian casualties.